Hello friends, it's a dry evening. It's been a dry afternoon here in the forest, so I've had the opportunity to sweep a little at my usual sweeping time. I thought of taking this talk down to the beach, but it's not that nice yet. It's perhaps a little windy and the sea is a little noisy down there. So welcome here again to my little kuti. I've used this word kuti a number of times without perhaps saying what that means. It's not some strange word I've made up. It is the Pali, it's a Pali word, and refers to a dwelling, a little wooden hut that monks live in. In our rules, the Vinaya, there are actual specifications as to the maximum size these can be, and they're usually provided, made, built by the lay people in the villages near where monks live in the forest for the monks' protection. It's their shelter. It's one of the four requisites, those being food, shelter, clothing actually is the first one, the robes, then food, shelter, and it's food first. Food, robes, shelter, medicine. We chant in the temple every night this reflection on the necessity of those requisites, our appreciation for them for what they are, and in the case of them all, the reality of them in that we require food purely for nourishment, the robes just for decency and protection from the elements, very simplest of possible shelter, which in this case is a kuti, and suitable for just helping with the protection of the elements and the mosquitoes in the forest, and medicine's the bare minimum that is required. And we were also reflecting this evening in the meditation in the chanting on the Anapanasati Sutta. And I've been asked by a number of people in the emails and some in the comments to talk a little bit more about Anapanasati meditation. And I will do that, but not today. I'm going to make a talk just about that on its own. I have a few other questions to talk about this evening. Also, I've been asked about, in relation to meditation again, people's practice when they get to a level and they don't seem to get any deeper. So maybe these people asking are referring to what they have heard of, jhanas, or different stages of samadhi. Then yes, I'm going to happily talk about that also in a whole talk. So we'll have a whole talk this week on deeper meditation, and a whole talk firstly probably on Anapanasati, because of course this is the primary method of meditation the Buddha taught, and one that leads in to deeper meditation. In the case of the Buddha, his enlightenment, and how much deeper can you get than that? Our chanting is about the best way to remember and understand and recollect this teaching of Anapanasati. So if you have a chanting book, look it up. It's called the Anapanasati Sutta, this chant, and it's in Pali, and if you're English speaking, in English or whatever other language you have it translated into, it's a simplified form of the entire sutta. It's a little bit quicker, less repetition. I find that with a lot of the chants that we chant here in Thailand, they are very useful, because they are taking the practical side of Buddhism and reflecting upon it. Especially in a monastery like this, they'll pick the chanting that is really orientated towards monks, but they also apply to you lay people practicing meditators in that they are helpful tips to help you with your meditation or how you live your lives. The other chant we reflected on, we were chanting this afternoon, this afternoon, likewise was helpful in reminding me as we reflect on this. They do it half in Thai and half in Pali, but the Pali bit I know more than the Thai. These various simple things. I think we were chanting I've forgotten which it's called, but there's a few that incorporate the Noble Eightfold Path. And just hearing that in the Pali and repeating it a few times just is what reminds me to be thinking all of the time that I should be practicing Sila, Samadhi, Panya and the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's not just something I keep repeating to you, it is something I continually reflect upon myself. And at the end of my day also, there is some reflection, either before or at the beginning of my meditation, just to go there. How have I been spending my day? Okay, I'll get on and answer some questions. I have some here in my bowl. They're not magically in my bowl on bits of paper, they're on this phone. So I shall try and see what we can do. Oh, a nice easy one to start with. Do you still go on Bindapata during the rains retreat? Bindapata is when we take this bowl, this very bowl, every day in the morning on alms round. Bhikkhu means alms mendicant, homeless one. We are fed because we go into the nearby village. We're supposed to live no further than about 1 mile. I'm not sure what the Vinaya specification on distance was, the units they would have used, but a couple of kilometres at the most for us in modern day times, and 1 mile from where I come from, in order that we can comfortably walk to the village or the town. People can, early in the morning, offer us food, no earlier than dawn. Put food in this bowl, literally a spoonful of rice, then to another house a spoonful of rice, and then we walk back. We do this, it's traditional, we do this in bare feet, and it, in terms of this Noble Eightfold Path I was just referring to, and this is where it's important to always be reflecting on these things for us, as well as you, is this is our right livelihood. As bhikkhus, alms mendicants, we rely on alms. We beg for our food. And our right livelihood, we do no other job to earn a living. We earn our living by begging for the very food that sustains our life. So this is really earning a living. If we did not get that food, we would die. Or we'd have to not be alms mendicants, therefore not entitled to wear the robes, to live in the monastery. If we were going out buying our pizzas and chips and chicken biryanis and thumbs up and Pepsi, it's not on. We go each day and we beg for our food. Right livelihood for monks. Now, there are also rules that the way we do this. We're not allowed to wear shoes when we do it, and we don't go before dawn, and certainly not much later than about 9-10 o'clock, but specifically we're not allowed to even eat after noon. So this in mind, in order for us as monks to keep the fourth precept of right livelihood, is it fourth? Right view, right intention, right speech, right action. Fifth, right livelihood, then followed by right effort, right mindfulness, right meditation. With this in mind, we go every day with our bowl. And now, during the rains retreat, you were meaning presumably, because it's lockdown for us, we stay in the monastery, with the exception of going into the town in the morning. This is never further than 1 mile away, you see. To be fed, or to collect our food and return to the monastery. And this we do even if it's raining. Heavy rain, it doesn't matter. This morning it was raining, as we say, cats and dogs. I don't know where that expression comes from. There were no cats and dogs coming from the sky, but such heavy rain, very, very heavy rain. But we take an umbrella. Robes have to be worn over all of our body, covering both shoulders down to our wrists and our ankles, and bowl over one shoulder. When we get to town, the bowl goes inside our robe and we have a kind of flap we open with the way we make this robe, and they offer food, put it in the bowl. This is right livelihood for monks. Your right livelihood is to go to work in a industry that is a good industry, so not harmful, so not killing, not breaking the precepts, not stealing, not going out stealing for a living, not acting in sort of sex slavery, not telling lies for a living, not partaking or selling alcohol or drugs for a living. These would be wrong livelihood, because that's the 5 precepts being broken. But right livelihood is your way of going out earning money to buy your food and buy your shelter. Now, our presence going to town, I'm making this a long answer for a short question, aren't I? Is also reminding the lay people that we're there, still in the forest, and they also come to the monastery. They come for blessings, they come to the chanting in the temple, they do other various things depending on the country and the region of the country you're in. But they'll also come offering other requisites, like these kutis at certain times of year, or whenever they might come and build a new kuti for a new monk if there was something of that order needed. They'll bring robes, the other one of the requisites, and also medicines that might be necessary of a basic nature. So yes, even in heavy rain we go on Bindapata, and it's every day. There's no excuse unless we're ill. Otherwise we are not keeping that 5th precept of right livelihood. We're relying on food elsewhere, for us monks. Now, it is different sometimes if you're in a country where it isn't possible to do that, and you're living in a monastery with other monks, and that's always a different structure anyway when you live in a community of monks in a city, the city monasteries. But here in a forest monastery, it's very much as the Buddha did it, as the Buddha taught his monks. And from when there was just a few of them to when there were hundreds and when there were thousands, they were all doing this in northeast India back 2,566 years ago. And today we do the same. Okay, next question. Oh, still food. Are monks allowed to eat and drink everything like people? Oh, sorry, like lay people. That's better. I thought you meant we're not people. Like lay people, such as chocolates, cakes, chips, tea, coffee, coke, etc. Yes, we are. But solid food only before noon, like I've just explained. No solid food afternoon. In fact, there is nothing prohibited in this tradition, Theravada Buddhism. There's I think 4 things monks can't eat: lion, human, snake, some other thing. I can't remember what it is. But actually there's specifically a no-go area. I wish I could remember the 4th thing. Maybe I'll tell you next time if I remember to look it up. But there's just 4 things actually specified in the Vinaya. So we can still eat meat as long as we don't kill it or order it to be killed ourselves, and fish. We don't in this monastery. It's a vegetarian monastery. I am personally vegetarian. In fact, I'm more or less vegan because I don't eat milk, drink milk, eat cheese or eggs. You know, this is a matter of choice, though. It's not one of the rules. But we can eat anything we like, so chips, coke, chocolate, cakes, everything before noon. And then oh yes, and then you asked me another question. So is coke or a coffee allowed after noon? Yes, I'm very happy to say it is. I usually have at 3 o'clock, Nampana it's called in Thailand. We go to the Nampana kuti, which is a shed down there, where we have an ice box full of nice cold drinks like Pepsi or various different sweet, fizzy cold drinks that lay people supply for this purpose. We just have one of those, and just to give us some sugar, a little boost in the afternoon. And of course coffee. If we have coffee, we cannot have milk, actual milk, or tea with actual milk in it. It can be Coffee Mate, which apparently is not made of milk. I didn't know that until I had to check the rules recently here as to what I could have. I drink black coffee, but I was trying to find something with some vitamin B12 content. Now I have some little pills, so that's okay. I don't need to be searching ingredients on packets anymore. Anyway, we can have black coffee, we can have Coffee Mate in tea or coffee, and we can have sugar, honey, so unrefined sugar really, so it would be jaggery in India, but they usually have brown sugar or something like here, or honey, and often once in the early evening before meditation I might have a black coffee with a spoonful of honey in it. I don't ordinarily have sugar, but it's just a little boost of energy and a boost in your spirits, because it's something nice, just give you that sensual pleasure, because there's nothing wrong with that. So all these nice things you're talking about, if they're available, we're allowed them, but we can't overindulge. We're always remembering that. This is mindfulness, remembering. Sati really means recollection, remembering, not to see there's 20 Pepsis in the icebox and drink 15. Just still have one, as if there was only one for you, or three as the three monks. So this is our training, this is what we are always reminding ourselves to keep to. But good question, thank you for asking. I'm very happy to say black coffee is allowed all of the time, and it is not an intoxicant, as sometimes people, after I say this, say, oh, but that's an intoxicant. Of course it's not. It's a stimulant. You can drive, you can even fly an aircraft full of hundreds of people across the Atlantic after many cups of coffee. You are quite able to do that legally, and all of your mental capacity and physical capacity is fine for that purpose. If you'd had an alcoholic drink, which is an intoxicant, then you couldn't even entertain the idea. And it's the same goes for smoking actually. Nicotine is not prohibited. This is a non-smoking monastery, but many monasteries, the older kind in Thailand, even the city monasteries. We've had monks from the city monasteries come here. I found it very surprising to see, after the meal, the Bindapata meal, they've got some cigarettes out and lit up in the sala. I was shocked, but I thought, oh no, because that is actually something they do. Of course, in other places it might be betel nut they'll chew, because these are nicotine or whatever, they're stimulants, they're not actually intoxicants. Now, of course, we know they're bad from the West especially. We know how bad they are for our health, and we avoid those for other reasons, but it's not because of the Buddha's teachings or the Vinaya, the rules. So it's just gone a bit of astray there. Okay, another question. This must be relating to a video I talked about when I was living in the van. How did you get your food and water when living out of the van, before and after COVID? Okay, it didn't make any difference before and after COVID. It was all COVID the last time I was living in the van. Actually, not for the short while in England last year, but the previous time when I was in my van for 6 months, it was COVID the entire time I was there. And then before that, COVID had never been heard of, but it was the same for me. I was living as a monk for 8 years before ordaining. So 5 years, sorry, before ordaining. So keeping the 8 precepts and living in places like this. And for 3 of those years, I was living in a van. And this subscriber is asking, how did I get my food and water? There was a water tap. We can drink the water out of the tap in England. There was a water tap. There's usually on public toilets outside, in car parks, they have a water tap. This is for people to fill up bowls for dogs. Dog walking places have them too, for their dogs to drink on hot days, or even to fill up their water bottles for joggers and things like that. So I would get my water there, but I'd have to walk 1.5, 2 kilometres, so a mile, to the water tap to get water, and then I'd fill up 3 or 4 2-litre bottles and bring them back to my van. That was my water for the day, for my coffees or tea, and for a bit for cooking. I used to be able to cook then, because although I was living as a monk, I wasn't a monk, so we're still allowed as lay people on 8 precepts to cook for yourself. I'd buy only dried provision food like pasta, rice, with the exception of I'd buy a sack of potatoes once a week, and for this I'd go to the local shop, which was about a bit further, so I wouldn't go every day because I'd already have to walk getting on for 3 kilometres minimum every day just to get water, and I couldn't carry shopping with the water. I'd have to return to the van, and then I would on occasional days go to the nearby shop. It was also in a slightly different direction. I'd walk, I think that was 3 kilometres there and back, so it would take me a good part of the morning to walk there and back, 6 kilometres, and buy a big bag of potatoes, pasta, dried things, and maybe some tin food, some dried spices, things like that. And anything that would keep, because I didn't have a fridge, so I'd buy onions, which keep quite a long time, and even fresh tomatoes will last quite a long time, especially if they're not quite ripe. And you could put them in the front of the van, where it didn't matter for tomatoes if they get too warm. Occasionally I'd treat myself to some bananas, but I'd just walk to get it. I wasn't being fed. During COVID it was a little bit more difficult because some of the shops would be closed, but there were always places available for I just had to ask the dog walkers or locals what was open, and that was that. So quite easy, really. Okay. So that's quite a long question. I think maybe I'll leave that. Have you ever been tempted to... I won't leave it, I will come back to it one day, but not just now, because I'm going to run out of time. Have you ever been tempted to follow the Ajahn Chah forest tradition? Well, I am. I was trained in the Ajahn Chah Thai forest tradition in a monastery near here, off and on for about 5 years, and then although I was ordained in India and a monk there for 3 years, I've continued practicing in this way, being that I was most of the time on Tudong when I was in India, so practicing Jutanga, which is more ascetic than living in a city monastery in a town, in a community. I was a wandering monk, and this is an Ajahn Chah monastery, this Thai Forest Monastery here, where I'm living currently. It's not one of the official branches, I don't think, of the Ajahn Chah group, let's say, but it follows his teachings and the core what, which is the important thing, the specific rules to that tradition. And we use his chanting book, and everything is the same as the monastery up the road, which is one of... Actually, that's also it's quite complicated. But yes, so I am, and it is, and this is the way I live. Okay. This question is, what is the purpose of hot water in the bowl for cleaning? That must be from a video where I must have featured my alms bowl when I was, before I went on alms round. Oh, every morning when I go to the sala, it doesn't have to be hot water actually. I might have used hot water on this occasion, or it looked like that on the video, I don't know. But every morning I go down to the sala at 5 o'clock. Before my own bowl, the abbot here and the Ajahn, so 2 Ajahns. The third Ajahn likes to do his own. He brings his own from his kuti. I bring mine from my kuti. The other 2 Ajahns leave theirs in the sala. So I get some water, take the lid off, the lid's off here already, pour it in the bowl, rinse it around slowly, pour it into the, it's called a spittoon, but people don't spit in them, but they are spittoons, these little pots we use for waste, little packaging when we're eating. spitting pips into, maybe. And maybe some monks do proper spit into them, that's what they're for, but I'm inclined not to so much. And I rinse the bowl with water and do this as part of one of my enjoyable duties. It's my service, it's my doing my little bit of service for my teachers, you see. So when they come down to the sala a little bit later to put their robes on and go on alms round, their bowl is already rinsed out. It's just to get rid of any insects or anything like this that might have crawled in the night or left something. It's just also, if they're a little bit wet, then the rice, when it's put in the bowl, doesn't all stick it into the bottom of the bowl, because it's very sticky rice sometimes, especially sticky rice, but ordinary rice also will stick sometimes in the bowl if it's not made wet. So I just rinse it out, and then my own. When we get near a town, we tip it up just to get the residue water out. So that's the purpose of that. So it's just to rinse, and it doesn't need to be hot. And there's another very long question. When I say it's a long question, it's because I can probably make one talk from those questions, so I'm reserving them for another time. We're just going to go through these quick ones today. Yeah, that's one, okay. I find it difficult to get information on the arupa jhanas, especially the second one, the timeless state. Okay, my reply, I have usually replied to these questions because I reply to all of your questions directly, which is why I don't mention people's names and the whole question. I give you the edited form because it's applicable then to everybody. But I have answered everybody's questions directly. So if you want to ask a question, you'll get a direct answer via the comments, or if it's personal, via email. And this I have answered, so don't worry about getting information. You don't need information, just practice, and you will experience it for yourself. Also, don't worry about all these stages and names and whether they're timeless or this and that. Now, the next talk, when I talk about deeper stages of meditation, and before that anapanasati, how we get to those deeper stages of meditation through mindfulness of the breath. Did I say that earlier? Maybe I didn't. Anapanasati is mindfulness of the breath. But I think you all know that. Then I'll go into this in a lot more detail, so I can really answer that question a lot more fully. But specifically, the answer really is you shouldn't be really trying to get information about these things. Yes, I can understand the interest, but learn the principle of how. This is why I'm talking about anapanasati first. Then we can worry about upacharya samadhi, kanaka samadhi, all of the different stages of samadhi, the arupa jhanas, which mean the the bodily jhanas, the rupa jhanas and arupa jhanas. There's the bodily jhanas that relate to losing the sense of the feeling of the body and things, and then there's the arupa jhanas. All of this is relating to those 16, as in the Goenka traditions of this practice of meditation, these 16 jhana stages. I mean, this is breaking everything down. It's like also, well, I don't want to talk too much about this because I will in the Anapanasati Sutta, but even in the Anapanasati Sutta, it gets taken into a little bit more of a complex area with these tetrads, the 4 tetrads breaking down into 8 and then 16 stages. You're just sitting down watching your breathing in and out, in and out. Now that might sound boring, but this is the point. No, it's short. No, it's long. You know, this is deep, shallow, quick, slow. You know, this is the point. The Buddha kept his teachings very simple. This is why I say in our chanting of the Anapanasati Sutta, we don't go into specifying all the different tetrads and 16 stages and this micro investigation of every detail. It isn't that necessary. Now, yes, of course, in the full Anapanasati Sutta it does this to some extent, but this is the way he was explaining it and teaching it. It isn't. It's a way of explaining it, but it isn't the practice. The practice is to know, is to let go of all this intellectual idea. So it isn't about acquiring information, it is about acquiring experience. And very much these states of samadhi and these stages, the hopeful stages of enlightenment you will attain to, are experiential. You cannot read about them in a book. It's not like learning how to program computers or something like that. You might have some technical training, learn ways to do this or whatever, however that works. It's more like learning to swim. When you know how to swim, you know how to swim. You don't need to know what your right index finger and your left little toe is doing whilst you're swimming. In fact, if you start thinking what your right index finger and your left little toe is doing whilst you're swimming, you'll sink, you'll drown, you'll get nowhere. You just swim. And to swim, you have to just jump in the water in the deep end and hope for the best, and you'll eventually swim. Now, you cannot learn that in a book. And the best way the Buddha could teach this was by repetition and in the very extensive Anapanasati Sutta, but it's all just taught just as succinctly in the more shortened version of the Anapanasati Sutta in the chanting, and most importantly, better understood by the practice itself of sitting, watching the breath, and developing samadhi. Once one has managed to attain this focused attention on the meditation object and the breath, and the reason the Buddha used the breath, there are many others. There's 40 other meditation objects he mentions also, but the one that's quoted as being his method, it doesn't say preferred method, but the method he was using at the stage of his enlightenment, the point of his enlightenment, was that, well, just that. If it's good enough for the Buddha to become enlightened, it's good enough for you. But not wanting to go now deep into that subject, I'm leaving it for tomorrow's talk, or the next talk anyway. I better just stop there, because with that I'm wanting to elaborate. Is there another short question to put me off that? Okay, yes, another short question, and then I think my time, or the equipment's time, this phone's time, might be up. I don't want social approval. I desire how to be at ease with the insanity of society. Now, of course, all of these questions do relate generally to the videos if they come from the comments. So I can't remember what the video was. I can't remember even what yesterday's video was. But it's still an interesting question. You don't want social approval. That's good. This is about, you know, oh, I think someone was perhaps asking about my lifestyle being quite different from the culture I come from, and was I having trouble with society, leaving society? And I probably said, well, you know, don't worry about it. And they've said, well, they're not looking for social approval, they just want to desire how to be at ease with the insanity of society. Again, my direct answer was, we don't try and accept other people's defilements. You see, you're not at ease with the insanity of society. It's because that insanity is born of the defilements, greed, hatred and delusion. Now, we cannot be at ease ourselves with greed, hatred and delusion. We're spending our work is eradicating greed, hatred and delusion, whether you're a lay practitioner or a monk. This is our primary objective. This is the eradication of the cause of suffering and desire, greed, hatred, delusion. So you don't need to be at ease with other people's greed, hatred and delusion at all. We just work on eradicating our own. You cannot even try to suggest, well, you need to eradicate greed, hatred and delusion there, mister, because you're just upsetting everybody. It's not going to hit home. They're not going to understand. They're not going to... You haven't got enough time to explain to each and every person the errors of their ways. Let them see you as an example, and they'll make their own inquiries and find the path you found that led you to the eradication of greed, hatred and delusion, hopefully one day, as you progress happily on the path towards Nibbana. I think that's a good place to leave it for today. Thank you for watching.